Welcome into Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. I'm Megan Payton. It's Overreaction Monday today. We're going to talk about what was a not great performance by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sorry, we've got to stay on it for at least one more day. But I promise you, we're going to have Steelers news, injuries, recaps, draft targets, a lot coming up here on Steelers Talk. So if you guys are not subscribed, help us out here at Chat Sports. These videos are free. We promise to keep you updated. Press that big red button or go to youtube.com/Steelers TV. Before we get into our Overreaction Monday, we have some breaking news here in Pittsburgh. TJ Watt placed on the COVID list, another big loss for the Steelers. Now, whether or not he's going to be able to play on Sunday against the Ravens, to be determined. If he's vaccinated, he's going to need to have 2 negative tests. I'd say that's pretty unlikely if he is, in fact, a true positive. Now, if he's not vaccinated, then he's definitely not playing on Sunday. This is very unfortunate for Pittsburgh because they've already dealt with this with Big Ben, with Minkah Fitzpatrick. They cannot keep losing guys. And in this overreaction video, we're going to talk about, the injuries that TJ Watt had with his hip and knee and how that affected his play. Obviously, him going on the COVID list is definitely not helping out the Steelers. So if you missed the game yesterday, Steelers lost 41-10 against the Bengals. It was one of the worst Steelers performance. I'd say probably their worst performance this season. Really, the tackling was an issue as always, or as it always has been, I guess, these last few weeks. I feel like this has been a common problem. I'd say the offense wasn't looking good. Chase Claypool, a lot of these things were a factor into why the Steelers got beaten up so bad. So now what we do on Mondays, we overreact. We'll let you guys know if we think that these are overreactions or proper reactions. You fight with us in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. But let's get into it. The first overreaction for Monday is that TJ Watt was not ready to play. So as we know, he was out last week with his injury, and now he's back. And I'd actually say that I think TJ Watt was still a little banged up. And it makes sense because normally we would expect Watt to have a little bit more of a dominant game. He didn't in this Bengals game. And I'd say that they wanted him back out there because they're in must-win situations right now, but he didn't do much. But if you look at what he's done in 2021, I mean, it has been impressive. He's had 41 tackles, 12 and a half sacks, 13 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. Now, we didn't see that TJ Watt this past week. I do think that he's still, recovering. I think that hopefully by next week, he's kind of getting a little bit healthier. He'll be back to kind of the Watt we know and love. But overall, this was one of the worst defensive games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, the Bengals had 198 rushing yards. You can't let that happen. Joe Mixon completely ran all over them. They took out Joe Burrow at the end of the game. There was missed tackles by James Pierre. Devin Bush struggled. We've talked about that. And these guys know it. I mean, we're talking TJ Watt right after the game. I mean, he said this. He said, it wasn't something any of us are proud of. You never want to have that feeling coming out of a game. We put it on tape, and now we have to own it, move forward, and know that everybody sees what just happened today and what we can expect moving forward. We can't keep playing like this. It's absolutely embarrassing. And he's right. I mean, it was an embarrassing game. And I think when you think of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you think about how dominant of a defensive team they are. We are not seeing that. And to me, this is an issue that's been going on for long enough. They've got to figure it out because TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward, they cannot hold this defense together solely. You need some of these other guys to step up. And right now, I'd say the Steelers defense, if I was grading them, it'd be pretty low. So you know what? Speaking of grading them, let's just ask you guys, what would you grade the Steelers defense performance last weekend? We're going to grade this on a scale of A, B, C, D, or F. This is the pinned comment, so make sure you get your votes in. And let me know how you think the Steelers defense performed last week. All right, moving on. The next overreaction, and of course we jump to this, and people jump to this, are the playoff hopes going away for Pittsburgh? And I mean, I'm just going to be honest and say, no. Let's live in reality. The Steelers can absolutely still make the playoffs, but they cannot make the playoffs if they're going to continue playing this way. You can't have both your offense and defense performing that bad. One area's got to step up. One phase of the game has to improve. Hopefully, It's both, but we're going to talk a little bit about where the Steelers sit in the playoff picture. But I am going to tell you first about what's happening on Cyber Monday. If you guys forgot, it's Cyber Monday today. And now is the time. I'm telling you, go check out these Fanatics hoodies, because already they had a great deal where you can get up to 60% off on some of these hoodies. Now you can get an additional 20% off of all of the Steelers gear. You just got to use code Monday. So this is only for today. So if you're watching this video, Cyber Monday, go to chatsports.com/Steelers hoodie and get an insane deal on some of these amazing hoodies, zip ups, pullovers. We got the Aaron Andrews line, a lot of gifts that you can get for the holidays, because if you end up waiting, you're going to end up spending like double the amount of money. So take advantage of this deal. Go to chatsports.com/Steelers hoodie. All right, back to the standings. Where do the Steelers sit? Right now, they are in third as far as the AFC North is considered. The Ravens sit at 8-3, Bengals 7-4, Steelers 5-1, and the Browns 6-6. So this tie could have big implications on whether or not the Steelers will make the playoffs. Now, obviously, this AFC North division is very competitive, but they don't have to win the North to make the playoffs. As we know, there's 3 wild card spots. Right now, they're not in it, though. So they've got to start winning games. This is a competitive conference in general. I mean, look at these wild card spots. You've got the Bengals at 7-4. They would be the 5th seed if the playoffs were today. The Bills at 7-4 would also be at the 6th seed. I mean, these are good teams. The Chargers 6-5, they would take the 7th seed. So right now, Pittsburgh's up there. They've got Miami 5-7. They've got to compete with Indy, Cleveland, the Raiders, Broncos. So it's competitive. I'm not saying that it's out, but they do have the tiebreaker on Cleveland. I think that that's going to maybe have a factor into, when we get closer, but they've got to start winning some games. They've got to start playing tougher, and we can't keep losing or else they're not going to make the playoffs. And these games that they have coming up are going to be a little bit challenging. It's not easy. They've got the Ravens, obviously the best AFC North team right now. That's going to be a hard game. The Vikings, they're doing well. Also, Thursday night football, prime time. That's always very competitive. The Titans looking good as well. They're not going to catch a break for the rest of the season. The Chiefs, who are really starting to look well now, the Browns, and then you end with the Ravens. So there is no gimme games at all for the remainder of their schedule. So the chances of them making the playoffs, they're not gone by any means. They're absolutely still in the hunt, but they cannot afford many more losses. That's just simply how it is as we get closer to the end of the season. So I am going to ask you guys now, looking and heading into week 13, what are the chances that the Steelers make the playoffs? Do this percentage-wise. So if you're saying 100%, that's very confident of you, but go to the comments. You can type whatever percent you think it is that the Steelers will make the playoffs. All right, moving on to more overreactions for this Monday. Is it time for a new offensive line? And absolutely, yes, because we need to see improvement here. This needs to be something that the Steelers rebuild next year. We talk about, this draft coming up. We're actually going to do some draft videos in the near future, but the offensive line has been a struggle, continues to be a struggle. Obviously, it doesn't help when you have an older quarterback like Big Ben out there who can't take the injuries like he could back in the day. But Dan Moore Jr., rookie, he needs to step up. Kendrick Green has been struggling as well. Just the bad snaps. I'd say that we need to see a little bit more out of Trey Turner. It's just overly underwhelming, I'd say this offensive line is. So when we get into draft targets later on in the week, I'm going to talk about ways that the Steelers can hopefully up their offensive line so it's not as much of a struggle as it was, this year. But I think that if we're talking about this season, we've got to see immediate improvement. And I know injuries have been an issue for Pittsburgh, so I'm not trying to discredit them there, but I'd like to see improvement from these guys, especially when you look at a guy like Najee Harris, who is just not getting the gaps that he needs to succeed. I mean, you've got one of the most dominant backs, I'd say, in the league. I know he's a rookie, but he's been so impressive. We just can't see much out of him. He only had 8 carries last week for 23 yards, an average of 2.9. And they try to, run into a couple different backs, but it's just not working because this offensive line isn't giving any gaps. I'm not putting it all on them, but I would like to see some improvement. All right, last overreaction we have for this Monday is that Chase Claypool is getting too emotional. And, it's so funny. We talk about this with a lot around the league with receivers, cornerbacks sometimes too. But we saw the emotions get to Claypool last week against the Bengals. He was having a rough game. And to be honest, I understand his frustration. He had a lot of dropped passes. Some were his fault, some weren't, but just not the performance we'd like and kind of hope to see out of Chase Claypool. He has had 37 receptions in 2021, 608 yards, only one touchdown, though. You just can't have those face mask penalties, though. You can't let the emotions get to you. So I'd say it's common, but it's not okay. That's where I stand on the Chase Claypool drama, the face masks, the emotions. I think, hey, you need to step up and you got to keep your emotions somewhat to yourself because you're going to cost your team points, you're going to cost your team yards, and maybe even cost your team a game or so. So I'd like to see a little bit more out of Claypool. I don't think that that's an overreaction. But as we said, as we move on along the week, get into week 13, season is starting to get closer to an end. We're going to be talking drafts. We're going to be talking injuries, a lot of game recaps, still a lot more of the season to go, though. So make sure you are subscribed to Steelers Talk. It's free, guys. It's free, and we're here, and we want to do whatever you guys want. So if you guys have any video suggestions, always leave them down in the comments. We're here to talk about whatever you guys want. Go to youtube.com/Steelers TV or press that big red button. But just to recap here for our overreactions, we've got TJ Watt was not ready to play. I say, yeah, he was still a little bit banged up. Playoff hopes are going away. They're not going away. They're still in the hunt, but can't keep playing like they have been. Time for a new offensive line. Absolutely. We'll get into this more with our draft videos. This is going to be a rebuild, I think, off season as far as the offensive line goes for next year, but they need to step up right now. And also, Chase Claypool needs to get his emotions together and, step up as a performer. But I am going to ask you guys right now, if you have any other overreactions, let it out right now. Go to the comments right now. Let me know what you are feeling after this Steelers-Bengals 41-10 loss on Sunday.